everybody. I'm Troy Goldenberg, your host here at Maker's Bar. We're trying to create a million leaders. I'm here today with Ami Dar. He's the founder of idealist.org. We got connected over X or Twitter, and I'm actually very excited to be able to jump in here and learn more about him. Ami, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Oh, of course. I really appreciate you making the time. Let's jump right into it. Can you tell me about your early life, your early career, those first steps that brought you on your journey where you are today?
It's funny. Your question reminds me of there's an organization called Ashoka, which has like fellows around the world, and you get nominated, and then when they interview you, they have this question which they're known for. They come in, they say, first question, you were born, and then what happened? That's how the interview starts. So in a sense, you're asking me, you were born, and then what happened? So ideas.org, just as a sort of intro, ideas.org is a website that's been around since 1995. We're an old website. We have white hair. We've been around for a long time, and we connect 150,000 nonprofits around the world, every country in the world except I think North Korea. We connect 150,000 nonprofits with people who want to work with them, volunteer with them, etc. So it's basically a matching service for nonprofits and those that want to get involved in some way in their community or anywhere in the world. That's what Idealist is, if you sort of check it out today. In the US, it's also known as the leading nonprofit job site, career site. We're the Indeed or LinkedIn of the nonprofit world in the US. So how did I get into this? A long time ago, I was born in Jerusalem, in Israel. And then when I was 3, my parents went off to Peru and then to Mexico for 7 or 8 years. So my whole childhood really happened in Latin America, in Peru and Mexico until I was 15. And very early on, when I was maybe 8, I think, in Mexico City, I started noticing that in the streets there were poor kids my age, pretty much, that were begging for money, and, in the lights, in the traffic lights. And I started asking my parents, how come we have food at home and they don't? And like for some reason, that affected me already when I was 7 or 8 years old. And so that sort of opened this obsession, I guess, in my life of how do you, because I felt that I wanted to do something, and as an 8-year-old, there wasn't much I could do, but that feeling stayed with me, and the sense that all over the world there's this big gap between the good intentions that so many of us have. We see things in the news, we see things at work, we see things in the street, would like to do something, and very often for all kinds of reasons we don't. And so I got obsessed with how do you sort of close that gap between intention and action. And then I went back to, when I was 15, we went back to Israel. I did my high school there. Then I had to go to the army for 3 years. A long time ago, a very different reality. This was 1979. The big concern at that point was another invasion from Syria. There was a big war in 73 where Syria and Egypt had invaded, had sort of started a war in October of 73. By that point, there was a peace agreement with Egypt, but Syria was still sort of a hot border. And so I spent 3 years essentially on the Lebanese and Syrian borders. And when the army was finished, I was angry for all kinds of reasons. There was a war in Lebanon for the last 6 months of my service that wasn't great, to say the least. So I went traveling for a couple of years in South America. I spoke Spanish. I speak Spanish. So I could just basically immerse myself. And I was thinking, what do I do with my life? Literally, like I'm 22, 23, 24 years old. What do I do with this life that's been given me? And ever since I was 3 or 4 years old, I hated school with a passion. So college was not going to happen. That was out of the question. That was simply not going to happen. I had dropped out of high school when I was 17, and this was not going to happen. So I started meeting lots of people. This was the 80s. There was no web. I started meeting people who were traveling, local people that, again, wanted to do something for what they were seeing around them in the world. And there was no obvious place to start. And there was no web, so you couldn't imagine a way to create that place. Mm-hmm. But I somehow thought there has to be a way. And I realized one day I was 24 and I was hiking out somewhere. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to connect good people with each other and with ways of doing good. How? I haven't got the faintest idea. And I don't know anyone, and I don't know anything, and I have no money, and there is no technology to do this, but I will somehow get this done. So I went back to Israel. I was a waiter. I was a translator. A friend of mine started a software company in the mid 80s, very early. And he hired me to be his international marketing manager because I could spell in English. That was my big asset. I could actually write a fax in grammatical English, so he hired me. And then I came to the States in '92, and I set up his subsidiary here. Still obsessed with this. And in '93, '94, I saw the web for the first time. The initial idea of the web, which was really just connecting text to each other with links. I mean, that's all we had at the time before the first graphical browser was invented. And so I saw the web. I saw this page that had like a little glinting word in the middle. When you clicked on it, it went to another page. It was a link. And I thought, oh my God, this was created just for me. I've been waiting for this for 10 years. Now I can create these connections. And that was the beginning of this. I realized this was very early on, 94, 95. There were no search engines. There was nothing like this. It was just Yahoo. And I thought there should be a website where you could find all the other nonprofit websites. So I got a couple of interns and sat them down for summer. And we found every nonprofit in the world that we could find that had a website and launched the first version of this thing. So long answer to your question, that's the sort of the career. So there was some international background. I had a bit of a business background when I started, which I think is very beneficial. I think that many nonprofit founders don't have a business background at all, and it's useful. You know, you can be passionate about something. You still need to know how to pay an invoice and how to hire someone, all those things. So that's useful. So I'm glad I had that. And then we got on our way, and it's been a very long, sort of process, but here we are. So that's a first long answer to your question.
No, that's an incredible journey. That's super cool and very noble. And especially for someone like myself, where people are in their 20s are just, I want to do something. I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah.
It's very relatable and very noble. So when you were in the 90s, you see the internet. What were those first initial big challenges that you had when you were trying to get this all set up?
Yeah. So I think that there were two when we started, and we really launched, what became Idealist, which, by the way, just the name is interesting. I was looking for a name for this site, and I had a terrible idea, and thank God the URL for my terrible idea was not available. So the idea that I had was Catalyst with an I, right, instead of a Y, like a catalyst. There's also a list of things, right? So I looked for it and it wasn't available. Thank God, because we'd be called Catalyst today, which is a terrible name. But the idea of list with an I stayed in my head. And then 2 weeks later, I was walking somewhere and I suddenly stopped and I thought, oh my God, in English, idealist is idealism, but it's also a list of ideas. It's an idea list. And of course, most people have never, thought of that pun, unintended pun. And so I ran back to the office and the URL was available. This was early times. Yeah, ideas.org was available. So we became ideas.org. The two biggest challenges were that the site is a matching site. You have organizations posting things and you have users, finding things. On day one, we built the site, we launched it. And on day one, we literally have 0 organizations and 0 users, right? So imagine Amazon.com launching as a bookstore as it did in 94, 95, but without any books. I mean, this makes no sense, right? Why would a user go and find volunteer opportunities when there are none? And why would an organization go and take the trouble of listing stuff when there are no users? So magnificence of chicken and egg situation.
Yeah.
So what we did is we built the container for it. And then we went and we created 50 fictional organizations. We just basically invented 50 organizations to show people what it would look like if their nonprofit was there. And so then enough jumped in that within a week we had a couple hundred, and then people sort of started coming. So the first challenge was to just get people to sort of, do it. Now, one advantage in 95, 96, 97, 98 was that all of this was so new that it still felt like an adventure to people, right? Oh my God, I'm going to get on the internet, right? We would do these workshops for nonprofits in 96, 7, 8 about the internet. And we would ask people in the audience, we would start, how many people in the audience have an email address? And like 50% would say me, right? Like just the idea of email was still so like new, right? Yeah. People would forward jokes to each other by email because like it was just this new thing. So so one was the chicken and egg problem. That was definitely complicated. The second biggest problem for a long time was funding. So we started a site on an old Pentium machine in my apartment. Basically, that was the server for it, and very soon it was getting enough traffic that it didn't work. Um, it was extraordinarily difficult to get any sort of foundation or philanthropic support for it, for a couple different reasons. Two that I understand, and one that I still sort of still pisses me off. So the two that I understand are that the whole thing was very, very new. So most foundations, traditional foundations, had no idea what we were talking about. A friend told me, "You're trying to sell TV Guide, the idea of TV Guide, to people who've never seen a television. It's not possible. You can't explain TV Guide to someone who doesn't know what a TV is." And so we're trying to explain a directory, a global directory of nonprofit websites to people who don't know what a website is, or who think it's a passing fad, or who, by the way, are really annoyed by it. One sort of secret in our little industry is that the web is not, if you're the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, any of the big foundations, right?
Mhm.
People knew about you before the web, and they could just send you a proposal and stuff like that. Now, suddenly, you have to have a website, and any poor peasant in the world can send you a request. Like, this is not great for them. They suddenly get overwhelmed by stuff because they have to have a public website, and anyone can write them. Oh my God, these guys have money, right? I'm going to send Bill Gates an email. He has money, right? So basically, everyone is writing them. Anyway, so they didn't know what it was, and so there was technology was simply not a thing that they knew what we're even talking about. The second thing that I sort of understand was that from the very, very beginning, Idealist was for any nonprofit working on any issue anywhere. So anywhere in the world, any issue, young people, old people, environment, human rights. I was very naive, and I thought that because we're working on all issues, we would interest everyone on the funding side. Turns out that by working on multiple issues, you interest no one. That's what happens. So if you simply do two issues, if you say, we're going to do intergenerational stuff, we're going to get young people to meet older people, you'd think it would interest both the old people funders and the young people funders. It turns out that they both tell you to go see the other one. They don't ever want to do one thing. So that I understand. The part that still pisses me off is that I had come here from Israel in 92. I had hired two people to work with me on this. One was this young one from Vermont. One was this guy from Jersey who didn't know anyone either. And so the three of us were completely unconnected. We didn't know people. It turns out that in nonprofit, in the foundation world, it matters tremendously. It matters too much who you know, right? In the VC world, the venture capital world, they at least try, and I think they actually in many cases succeed in essentially saying what matters is the idea, right? And there's this fear in the VC world, this constant fear of missing the next Google, right? Of missing the next amazing idea. So in the VC world, they have really smart people. They have I don't know if they're smart or not, but they have Stanford MBAs literally opening the mail, right? What used to be the mail, for this fear of missing out on something. Like, you don't want to miss out on an amazing idea. So it's still helpful to know people. It's helpful to have a track record, but are literally looking for great ideas. In the nonprofit world, it matters tremendously who you know. You can't get in the door. And I didn't know this. I was very naive, and I didn't realize, because I wasn't from here and I hadn't gone to college. It took me 10 years to understand that, for example, if you are the daughter or the son of a famous, professor or dentist or hospital director in New York, and the people who come to dinner while you're growing up are those kind of people, that's like helpful when you're 22. I didn't realize that. It took me 10 years to understand that I was such a nobody, and I didn't know anyone, that I didn't even understand that it can matter who your parents know. I was completely oblivious to this. Your parents, your networks, right? School. I had none of that. I remember once standing at a sort of very, very poignant and visual. I was the Ford Foundation in New York is on 42nd Street, close to the UN. And they have a building that literally looks like a fortress from the outside. It's a whole block. It's a fortress. It's inside, there's an atrium, and they have windows on the inside pointing to this garden, and they can all see each other working. But on the outside, it's literally a fortress. It's just this closed concrete block. I remember standing across the street in the 90s, seeing people walking in the door across from me. And I was wondering, how do you get into that door? What is the magic word that you say that opens that door? Because in that building, there's a pile of money, and I want some of it. And how do I get in? And I didn't know. And so anyway, so the funding was very hard. So for about 5 years, we survived on an annual budget of $100,000. That was our annual budget for 5 years. I was still working for the software company, for my friend's software company here, and so I was volunteering doing Idealist while he was great, and he essentially in the office that he had here, that we had here, he allowed me to basically take a room and use it for Idealist, and I had a staff of 2 that I had to pay, but I didn't have to worry about rent or internet connectivity or the lights or whatever. I had to worry about 2 salaries, and he was incredibly supportive, and he made this possible. I kept working on as running the US operation while supervising those 2 people, so that my salary came from him, which was very helpful for several years. And then the rent and stuff was taken care of. So I had to raise money for these 2 people. So personal savings, his savings, we somehow survived for 5 years. And then in 2000, the whole internet went through this convulsion, big .com, bust, where basically lots of companies, businesses that have been working for free for eyeballs realize that eyeballs don't pay the bills, and so lots and lots of companies went bust. And that's the time when when websites, many of them, started charging for their services a little bit, something, right? So we realized that at that point, people were using us to post their jobs. Everything had been free. We hadn't been charging anyone for anything, and so we started charging $40 to post a job on Idealist at the end of '99. And at that time, we had been posting about 100 jobs a week for free. And so then we started charging $40. And so, economics, supply and demand. And what happened the following week was that the jobs went down from 100 to 50, but the money went from 0 to 2,000, which is very nice. So then we could actually pay these 2 people. And the site essentially has been self-sustaining ever since. That's
Wow.
So, there's now 35 of us here. And, there's an office behind me that this thing pays for. But the site basically pays for itself. We've gotten, I think, $3 million worth of grants over the last 20 years. And the site has made like 100 million over the same time. So we're pretty proud of this. Yeah.
Very cool. Where are you stationed out of, by the way?
We are in New York. Let me actually show you. I don't know if you can, I can do something here with you. I don't know if you can see. Can you see the Empire State Building? Let me try to get the Empire State Building in the camera here somehow. Yeah, so we're in the corner of Fifth Avenue and 36th Street in Manhattan. That's where we are. And you're in Chicago.
I'm in Chicago.
Okay.
I bounce around a lot. My first job was a travel job. I took it. It was an ERP implementation job, and I took it because I have to travel so much. I went from Florida to Alaska to everywhere, truly. So, but that's an incredible story. Like wow, I love it a lot. Like, did you see this type of success coming? Like, what did you envision for the company when you started this versus to where you are now?
One sticking point. It's not, we're not a company, we're non-profit, we're 501c3 non-profits, we're an organization. But yeah, we run like a software business in a sense. I mean, we're 501c3, but we're mostly self-sustaining. Success. I thought things would happen much faster than they did. It took a long time. Everything took a long time. Nothing was easy. Like I said, it took 5 years to even hire a 4th person, a programmer. It took everything has taken a long time. But in the end, I don't know. I guess I've become also, I think, a bit more philosophical as I get older. I guess things take as long as they need to take. I don't know. I think, yes, sure, in theory, things could have been faster. We could have found, a great supporter early on that would have made things easier. But no, we're still, yeah. So that's that piece. Now, at the same time, I have to say that, so the site has been successful as a site, doing what I said we do, which is connecting people with nonprofits. I'm still obsessed with the original idea of bridging this gap between intention and action. There's actually, I'll tell you, there's 3 sort of obsessions here. One is what I said earlier, which is I think that many of us would like to do more. It's not always easy to know where to start, who to work with. Have a friend, I hope it's okay to say this, I have a friend who said that we live in a world right now where, we have these devices, and it's easier to find a stranger to sleep with than a neighbor to volunteer with. And I think it's actually surprisingly and sort of quite horribly true. I mean, in every
Yeah.
sense, you could actually connect for different reasons, but this is actually hard. And so that's one thing. So there's this gap between intention and action. The second thing I think I realized when I started working with my friend in Israel doing on the software business, we were selling a relatively simple device at the time in the 80s and 90s that helped software companies protect their software against piracy. It was a way to basically safeguard your software from copying. And we had to advertise it in all kinds of computer magazines and set up a distributor network and get it out there. And I realized that what was relatively a simple idea and very beneficial to our prospective clients took time and money and effort to push. You had to buy ads in magazines to get out an idea to the world. And that made me realize that there's so many amazing ideas in the world that don't have a marketing budget behind them. And therefore they don't go anywhere. The world is full of amazing ideas. Almost every social and environmental specific problem has been tackled by someone somewhere. We just don't know. It doesn't reach us. And it can be the most basic stuff. I was talking to someone here yesterday, these little aha moments that you can give people. You know how it's a small thing, Troy, but you know how a basic trampoline, right? That's like this surface and it has legs, and you get on top and you jump.
Yeah.
And if it's big enough and if you jump high enough, it's scary because you can fall off, right? So in many playgrounds, children's playgrounds in Spain, my wife is from Spain, we go there a lot. In many children's playgrounds, they have this little trampoline, maybe 3 or 4 feet across. But instead of being on legs, it's the top of a pit. You dig in the ground a couple of feet and you cover it with the tarp of the trampoline. And then you're jumping in the hole. But if you fall off, nothing happens because you're at ground level. You can't fall off. You're jumping in the hole, right? You see what I'm saying? The tarp is at the ground level, right? So such a simple idea. But unless you see it once, you won't think of it. You have to see it somewhere. And who's going to create a global ad campaign to promote trampolines and holes? Nobody. So you'll never hear of this. And this is true for so many big things, small things, how to dig a better well, how to teach a better class, how to run a better prison. There are amazing ideas out there. They just don't flow. So that's the second obsession. And the third obsession is that we are not as connected as we should be for doing good. So we live in a world now where your typical building in Chicago or in a typical street, almost everyone is online, right? People have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever you want, basically, and phones and computers and stuff. The average person, most of us, all of us really, if you have 2 people living in a building and I'm on the 4th floor and you're on the 1st floor and we're seeing something out the window and it's bothering both of us, we're not telepathic. We have no way of knowing that somebody else in the building is thinking the same thing. And 2 people together can actually start something. 1 person alone is hard. How would you guess in a building of 100 families that 4 families are bothered by the same thing? You wouldn't guess. And there's no way. And then what's interesting, even more interesting, is that even if that building is one of the fortunate buildings that has like a good, listserv, right? Or a Facebook group or something for sharing nannies and plumbers and stuff. Do you have the social permission to post something in that group that is about, poverty in Chicago, or I want to get involved, or is it not really the thing you do in that group? Would your neighbors be annoyed if you posted about something semi-controversial, right? Sure. And so even if you wanted to just propose something and go to door and say, hey, who wants to come build a playground down the street? Do you have the social permission to do this? Or does it feel weird? Or you just are going to keep it to yourself? So many things just don't happen. So what I want to do, what Idealist wants to do next is really take on these 3 big challenges to basically make action easier, more connections happen, and more ideas flowing. And if you want to keep going, we have a very specific way in which we want to do that.
I was gonna ask how actually. I'm very intrigued. I love the passion. I love where your head's at. I love where your head's been at for the last 30 years.
I love you're very good. I'll give you. I know we're live and stuff, but that's okay. I'll give you. You're a very good interviewer, Troy, because you look interested even if you're not. I mean, you have a very good way.
I am interested.
No, but it's important because I think when you're interviewing someone, like I can't fake passion if I see boredom in your face. I just can't do it. Some people can. I can't do it. And so you're drawing me out, and that's really important. So that's a small
I
compliment
appreciate
to our
that. Thank
interviewer
you.
here today for the
Thank
audience.
you. I appreciate you.
Basically, so how do we do this? How do we get more action, more ideas, more connections flowing? The trap that you can fall into if you're trying to create this kind of network or movement is to try to agree on a whole bunch of different things. That is actually really difficult. It's even among well-meaning people. If you start trying to agree on specific issues and you put bullets on the wall, every bullet you put up, you're going to lose some people. If you keep going, in the end, you have 20 bullets and you agree really strongly with yourself and with nobody else. And so
Yeah.
that's not, it's an obvious trap to fall into, but it's not, you don't get anywhere. So I think that there are three things actually that I think we can agree on, many of us. And that if we do, we can do something amazing. And that's what we're about to do in the next, we're about to launch this in the next few weeks. Three sort of, if you like, social protocols that we can agree on. The first one is a very broad vision or a very broad set of values, which is that agreeing that we want to build, all of us want to help build a world where all people can lead a free and dignified life. That's it. More freedom and more dignity for more people. And we want to get there in a spirit of generosity and mutual respect. We don't want to get there by breaking things or by being violent or by the way in which you want to get there is through generosity, respect. And you can add other values to this, like kindness and peace and joy, but it's basically more dignity and more freedom for more people. So that's just one broad vision that most people, I think, or most well-meaning people would say, sure, I have nothing against more freedom and more dignity for more people. That sounds good. Let's do that. Then as a mechanism to get people, to thinking about what they can do and do it, and then connect with others and have more social permission, have more ideas flowing, a very simple idea. Imagine if once a month, on a specific date, and I'll get to that date in a second, I'll actually say, that date right now. You know how the date, as an example, you know how 3/7 is March 7th in the US, but it's July 3rd in Europe and other countries. The only dates where that's not true is 3/3, 4/4, 6/6, 7/7, right? Those dates work everywhere. So we're going to arbitrarily grab those dates, and we're going to declare simply, arbitrarily, that 1/1, 2/2, 3/3, 4/4, 12/12 is called an idealist day. And on those days, those days are days that are designed by all of us together for sparking and celebrating action and collaboration. On that day, it's okay to go to your neighbor, knock on her door, and say, I brought you cookies because I haven't met you ever, and you're welcome to the neighborhood. On that day, raise your hand at work and say, hey, how about we invite a speaker to speak about X, or how about we do Y? On that day, the mayor can close the streets and have kids play outside, or invite business people to speak at the schools. So it's not, some things can fit to be done in that day. Let's go and clean this, or bring a speaker, or say something in the media. But it's more about sparking and celebrating, sparking action going forward, celebrating anything we did that month. The media, papers, websites, online media, television, radio, it'd be wonderful to give them an excuse to once a month highlight someone in the community. Imagine you could go to a TV station in Chicago and you could say, hey, I'm Troy. I'm not here to tell you about myself. I think that organization over there is doing amazing work. And on 8/8, you should run a story about them. Oh, what's your interest in this? None. I think they're doing amazing work. And then on 8/8, you should interview them. Go. And so every month, so this idea that basically, and of course, any action like that has its own value, its own intrinsic value. Imagine this happening around the world together at the same time, month after month, just growing in impact. Every time we see inspiring things, we are inspired to do more the next time. And lastly, just on the day itself, we can say more about it later, is that if you want this to happen every month, and you want it to be something that people look forward to, as opposed to, oh my God, that horrible thing is coming again, or they're going to ask me to do stuff or whatever, there has to be an element of fun and whimsy as well. We have to sort of add things to it. And this is, of course, open. This is not us organizing. This is us creating a receptacle in which you're welcome to do whatever you want, right? So there have to be elements of it that are just fun, right? So, for example, organizing a bike ride around Chicago at 2 a.m. Why? Because it's cool. And because maybe people have thought of doing this, but they never have, or at sunrise, right? Imagine a sunrise bike ride of 10,000 people around the city. Why? Because that day the police will allow us, because that day is idealist day, and we'll ask them, it'll be nice, and the mayor will let us do this. But what problem does that solve? None. It's just fun. Let's do it. It creates community. It's cool. So do things that are just for community stuff, community building. Again, neighbors meeting neighbors, and it can be far bigger things, right? Builds, ideas, suggestions, but just primarily the social permission of one day a month in which is okay and more than okay to suggest, propose, plan, invite, without feeling that you're weird about suggesting something. No, everyone is. So I am too. It's fine. So that's the second element. The third element is that for that to be visible, it'd be great for us to be able to see that someone out there either shares our values or is doing something cool that day. So we have been thinking about this for a long time, as you can see. And you know how the recycling logo has been so successful in spreading that, and anyone can just use it. The rainbow flag has been incredibly successful in making someone who is, gay or lesbian feel welcome somewhere just by seeing that symbol. So in the same way, we have this symbol that we have been sort of working on for a long time here. It's just a very simple sort of hand-drawn, if you like, yellow, blue, and green circle. It turns out to be incredibly adaptable and adoptable. People have done amazing things with it. You can have earrings with it. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. And the idea of telling people, take this symbol, it's yours. It means dignity, freedom, joy, generosity, respect, kindness. Use it, paint it, put it on your t-shirt, put it in your car, put it on a wall. If you're in Iran and you want more freedom, put it on a wall. If you're anywhere where you want to, you don't have to say anything, no words, just hold this and say, this is what we believe. And by seeing that, we can create a sense of people together. So a basic set of values, a day a month to push it forward, and a symbol to make it possible. If we agree on those very simple things, around that, you can build a whole ecosystem of local groups, of support, of technology. Anyway, that's a spiel. I can add one last thing if you want. There are also, I think, three basic rules, three basic no-nos that we can agree on, which are fairly simple. We've been using them in Ideals for years. So, within this idea of more action for more people, no violence of any sort, no attack against anyone, anywhere, based on their identity, no action based on you about who you are. I could disagree with what you think. I'm not going to attack you because of who you are. So that's the second one. And third one requires a bit more explanation sometimes for some people. No action about you without you. So no helping people without asking them if they actually want your help, right? Don't presume anything. I was can I tell you one small thing about that? I was going down. I was going home one day. I was going down Fifth Avenue, and it was getting dark. You could imagine Michigan Avenue. It was getting a little bit dark, and there was a woman who was sitting against a wall, sort of a building, and she was holding a cup between her hands. And so I walked by, and so I thought, oh, she's begging and she needs to eat. So I walked over and I had a quarter in my pocket, and I was about to put the quarter in her cup, and she yelled at me, horrified. She was just drinking some coffee, and she was waiting for the bus. I didn't see the bus stop in front of her. She was sitting on the side, waiting for the bus. And I presumed I was about to drop a quarter in her coffee. So don't go helping people without actually making sure they want your help. There's a presumption there, paternalism, and actually ask people before they, there's an old lady crossing the street. Don't grab her and sort of, pull her. Maybe she's just waiting for a friend, like don't presume that people want your help. So anyway, so a day a month of action, celebration, collaboration, a symbol to make it all visible, and some values to guide us. And that's where I want to take Idealist next. That's really the big dream that has been since I was, 7 years old. How do you get more people to do more together, basically? Thanks for listening to this whole long thing.
Oh, I love it. I really have never talked to somebody with so much passion.
I'm beginning to convince myself that it's a good idea. Anyway, yeah.
No, I think it's a great idea. I love the passion. It's hard to come across people that have this much passion. I mean, most entrepreneurs, like, obviously there is a common thread there. There's a common gene, so to speak, but you can feel it when I'm speaking with you. It's incredible. And what you've been able to accomplish over the last 30 years,
thank you.
It's wow. It's incredible. Like, I truly want to keep learning more about this. I don't know how much time we have left here, so
it's up to you. I don't know how long you like these things to go.
We usually go about an hour, if that's 30 minutes to an hour, somewhere in there. We're now over the 30-minute mark.
Entirely up to you.
I mean, I want to take your whole day from you. I'm very intrigued. I am very intrigued by this whole thing, and it's really cool. I mean, it's such a noble venture. And wow, like there's a lot of people that set out to do something like this in their 20s or in their 30s, and uh, it's incredible seeing someone just accomplish it through hard work and through the struggles and through like just with a vision and a passion. Well, I guess on that note, what are like some of the key? I want to say skills, but it's not quite the correct word. Just the key attributes that, and maybe lucky breaks even. Like, what are some of the key moments or key things within yourself that let this work all these years later?
I think, as you probably know by now, interviewing people is that it's hard to answer that question without falling into cliches. In other words, and cliches exist for a reason. I think very often when entrepreneurs get asked these questions, you very often hear similar answers. I think for good reason. So I think two things. One in my case specifically, stubbornness. Just sticking to it. Basically, I mean, I am probably, you can ask my wife, I'm probably one of the most stubborn people I know. I just stick to this thing, basically. I mean, stubborn or, just like persistent, right? You just do not give up, essentially. Now, that's a good trait to have if you have an idea worth pursuing. That's the part that people don't talk enough about. It's a terrible trait to have if you have a bad idea, right? So now, of course, how do you know what's a bad idea and what's a good idea, right? The classic tragic place where you see this happening is the person, for example, who wants to be a novelist really, really badly, and they spend years trying to write a novel, but they can't write. And this is almost like a curse, right? Where basically, it's like you were divinely inspired to do something, but you were not given a talent to do it. Like, that's not great. So it's if you have a bad idea, don't go for it. If you have a good idea, go for it. Now, how do you know, right? Because you don't want to waste your time, years, on something that is actually destined to fail, or is sort of a bad idea. And I think one key thing there, because people will say, well, your passion, choose your thing, go for it no matter what. Yes and no. I think that even ideas that people thought were crazy at first, or Airbnb, maybe most people thought that wouldn't work. Some people thought it did. Go to 20 good friends of yours, 20 people that you trust, even just look for people that you trust out there and share your idea with them. If all of them tell you that it won't work, if no one sees anything in it, and if you actually wouldn't use your own product, which is really important, then don't do it. Find something else. There are other ideas out there. I mean, would you use your own thing is, I think, really important. So anyway, being stubborn and sticking to it, I think, really, really, really matters. Luck, yes, another cliche. Lucky breaks happen. You have to be there for them. So this is you have to put yourself in position that when luck, comes in, you contacted me because you wanted to talk to me. I said yes. I'm now talking to you. I have no idea who's listening. Among the listeners, there may be someone who will say, "Ooh, this is interesting. I want to help this guy," right? And so, literally, by doing this, I'm putting myself in a position where someone might help me. If I had said no to you, I would not be in this position. So, how do you give yourself sort of more breaks? And then I think surround yourself, if you can, with good people. Again, another cliche, hire good people. What does that even mean? To me, it's always meant, yes, of course, you want people who are highly skilled, of course. I spent so much time with them, especially before COVID, but even now, where to me, it's kind and interesting people who make me laugh. This has been my mantra forever. Kind and interesting people who make me laugh. That's who I want to have around me in my working life. I don't want to be bored. I don't want to be surrounded by sharks, and I don't want to be, So I want people who are kind to each other, who are interesting to talk to, who have good stories to tell, who are fun, who are funny. We laugh a lot here. We eat a lot. We laugh a lot. It's very important to us. So hire good people, stick to whatever you're doing, and then put yourself in positions to be lucky, to benefit from luck as it comes along, basically. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. Well, no, it's good confidence. I'm taking notes.
You're doing it.
I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed. Were there any books, mentors, like school guys? So I wouldn't assume there's any courses in particular that really affected you, but any books or mentors or anything like that really affected you beginning this journey, or
I should think that in advance. I know in a podcast you're supposed to have an answer for that question. I haven't done many of these. Just think of those in advance. I think that people I saw early in my life who who led by example. That I think has always been very, very important to me. There's something about don't ask anyone to do something you wouldn't do. That piece I think is really important to me. I do because in some sense we're running also a business here because we're entrepreneurial. So yes, of course I watch a lot what entrepreneurs have done. I can't comment. I don't know Jeff Bezos personally, right? I have no idea if he's a kind person or not. I don't know. And to some degree, I don't care. I see what he has built, and he has built an amazing thing, right? And so I read things that they write that are written about them because I think they've done something, fantastic. I read lots of, ironically, I mean, I care about issues and I read the news. I read lots of business books. I watch, business stuff. I watch interviews with leading VCs. I try to take ideas from anywhere I can, right? It's funny. The other day I was watching an interview with this guy, Toby Luft, I think is his name, the founder of Shopify, and he verbalized something that I've actually thought about for years, which is how meetings, in the average company, the average business, it's weird how you have a whole set of policies for who can spend $50, right? You're a CPA, you've done this kind of work, right? What's the authority to spend $1,000, right? And there's this whole process to ask to spend $1,000 on whatever. But anyone pretty much can call a meeting, which is weird because meetings are really expensive. And a surprising number of people in any business have the power to convene a meeting of 5 people for an hour. How much is the hourly rate for those 5 people? And so we actually spend a lot of money, and we have the power. And so people have the authority to convene a meeting with 5 people, but they don't have the authority to order pizza for them. That is weird. And so he sort of verbalized that. And he said that whenever you want to call a meeting, you have to actually specify the budget for that meeting. How much is this meeting going to cost in actual work time for everyone involved? And could it be cheaper by being shorter or by including fewer people? It doesn't fall in your budget for the year. Sorry, your meeting is too big and too long. Make it shorter. So that I thought was interesting. Little tips like that, where I think those things are important, and thinking, how to make meetings effective, how to make. So I don't have, and then I'm inspired also by people outside. There's a music director called Daniel Barenboim. He's originally from Argentina. Then he went to Israel. Then he, lives all over the world, and he, I think, personifies to me. He's created an orchestra of young Palestinian and Israeli musicians who play together. That kind of stuff, sort of going against the grain, showing what's possible. Those kind of things inspire me a lot. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. I don't know if that's exact. It's hard to find. I'd say that last example specifically, it's hard to find just kind of connecting ideals. So you mentioned, before, if you put 20 bullet points, you're going to end up agreeing with yourself and no one else. It's very cool that I can see it in you and in your organization that you have these 3 bullet points and you live by them, and you're able to not just see those in yourself and in your organization, but you look for it in the world as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can tell, so you take those lessons. You look for people that, like you said, you don't know who Jeff Bezos is as a guy, but you can take these lessons like, hey, these are my ideals. I can see this kind of being presented through here. It's very interesting, and I can tell all the knowledge you've built up. I can tell your passion and all these different things. It's very, very cool. I'm loving talking to you, truly.
No, sure.
All right.
What else can I tell you, Troy?
Well, I have about 5 minutes left before the hour is over. And I'd love to talk about specific topics with you, but that's maybe more personal opinions and versus a business charity 501c3 podcast here. So I guess closing questions a bit would be, going forward, how would you define success for Idealist with that new venture going on? And how would you define success for yourself?
Yeah, so it's interesting at this point, because it's a great question, because we there's something here that we want to basically release into the world. This idea It's just an idea, really. It's a concept, right, of a monthly day of action, collaboration, etc. In a way, it's funny. How successful can it be? Maximally, right? It can be as successful. I'm going to say something a little bit crazy here. It can be as successful as the weekend. The weekend, the idea that all of us stop working for both Saturday and Sunday, it's just an idea. It didn't exist, by the way, until the 1920s and 30s. It was invented almost simultaneously by two very different people. It was invented by Henry Ford, who thought it'd be cool for his employees to actually rest for 2 days and then etc. And there was a small Jewish union in the Boston area that also fought for this idea of 2 days off, because people used to work at least half a day, if not a full day, on Saturday and then get Sunday off. And so you have this, raging, leading anti-Semite of his time, and a small Jewish union essentially advocating for the same thing. And now suddenly we take the weekend for granted all over the world, right? What are you going to do on the weekend? It's just an arbitrary invention, this idea of stopping for 2 entire days. And so if we could institute that once a month, many people, many of us, all of us, enough of us, stop once a month to think about what we can do better for a better community, a better neighborhood, a better world, that'd be amazing. So you're giving essentially a concept out there, then pushing it and seeing what happens. So it's not so much success for idealists, it's success for the world. Can we actually do this, right? And that can be, again, the symbol spreading, it can be these values spreading, it can be this day of action spreading. And it would be measured basically in many, many more people telling you that they do know their neighbor, if the neighbor wants to be known, or otherwise leave them alone, that they do have ways of connecting, that they do have ways of doing, that this feeling of impotence that so many people have when they read the news is actually lower because we do know how to get involved. So that's success. And for me personally, I would start with, at the very top for me, which is being a good husband and being a good father. That's really important to me. So I'm married and I have 2 daughters, and the top priority for me completely is being a good husband and a good father. That's number one. Below that, if I can in some way help make it possible for more people to connect for what they want to do good in the world, that would be success. I mean, that would make me very, very, very happy. Yep.
I love it. Honestly, I can't wait to hear more about Idealist and hear more about the journey. This is definitely one of the coolest things I've come across.
Thank you.
I'm very blown away by this whole conversation and everything that you've done and everything that you're doing. And again, I'll go back to those 3 ideal bullet points there.
Yep.
If you connect one of the leading anti-Semites and one of the leading Jewish groups in the world for this concept, then who can't you?
Yeah, well, we didn't. Whoa, what happened? Sorry. Where'd you go?
I have you.
Okay, yeah, I have you. Something weird happened.
No worries.
No, again, I didn't. Basically the weekend. If you literally look for the word weekend in Wikipedia, you will read that crazy story of how it was suggested almost simultaneously by 2 completely different people who were, of course, not aware of each other. And it's just an interesting concept how the idea of Sunday as a day off in the Western world, Christianity, go to church, that was there. Then this second stage happened where in Industrial Revolution, they realized that if you gave people only Sunday off, many people would go out and get drunk on Sunday. As they would come over for hungover, they would come hungover on Monday mornings. And this is literally true. And the only way to prevent that is giving them at least half of Saturday. They can get drunk on Saturday. You close the bars on Sunday. The government actually doesn't allow the pubs to open on Sunday afternoon, and that way nobody comes drunk to work on Monday. And then they said, well, how about we actually give people the whole of Saturday? So that created the weekend, and it's a very it's not obvious. It's interesting, Troy. I know you're Jewish. Kids in Israel. So in Israel, because of all kinds of reasons, the day of rest is the Sabbath, right? Shabbat is the day of rest. So the week starts on Sunday. Actually, Sunday is our Monday. The week starts on Sunday, and you go Sunday through Friday. And for many, many years, there was no weekend in Israel. There was just Saturday. When I was a kid, it was Saturday. Kids in Israel still go to school Sunday through Friday. They are the most miserable kids in the world. They go to school 6 days a week. It is horrible. They go to school 6 days a week. And what's happening in Israel is that progressively, more and more workplaces have been giving Friday off to people. So no one has Sunday off. There's been this developing idea of a weekend that has been taken decades, where now many, many workers, not all, get Friday and Saturday off. So the weekend starts on Thursday afternoon, and it goes through, Sunday morning. One thing I think that many parents in the world would be envious to hear is that adults have Friday off, but the kids are in school. Friday morning is it's a shorter day for the kids, but Friday morning, every week, the parents have to themselves and the kids are in school. It's this amazing invention. The parents have Friday morning to themselves every week. It's amazing. The kids go to school. It's a very cool idea. American kids would hate me for saying, "Hey, how about you go to school on Saturday morning and your parents have that morning
Your
off?"
parents can love you, yeah.
It's never gonna happen here. We're not going back. But in Israel, that's still the case. The kids go to school on Friday morning, and the parents have that Friday morning to themselves, which is nice. Yeah,
it's interesting. It's interesting that it's all an idea. It's all just a
these
human.
are arbitrary constructions, right? You can just make them happen if you decide. That's all it is.
We just need the belief to be there. Which would bring us to economics, honestly, if you wanted to go down that route. But no, it's very cool. Thank you for coming on. I definitely look forward to talking to you again and keeping up with the journey. Honestly, it's been an incredible, truly eye-opening conversation, and I'm a big fan of Idealist and what you all are doing, and I'm sure the more and more I learn about it, I'll just be a bigger and bigger fan, and I'd love to help in any way I can. So, Ami, again, thank you for taking the time this morning. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, truly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. I'll hit this end, and then I'll talk to you soon.
Stay for a second if you want afterwards.
Please do.